So let's dive into this first question that I got from Reddit this week. The title is CCLI average attendance. Again, this is very niche,
riveting,
but I think it's going to go into a meaningful conversation.
Can't wait.
Of how you track attendance. All right. I'm presuming most of you use CCLI in your churches. And if you're not, you're stealing, you're lying or something.
Like Andrew.
It might be interesting to hear.
Or you only sing common domain hymn, public domain hymns.
Oh, that's true.
That is
or
true.
You're singing
that is
all
true.
original songs.
Or
that.
In which case, I don't want to.
You're singing all the hymns before Chris Tomlin got a hold of them.
Yeah. How do you calculate your average attendance? Our weekly attendance hovers around 200, which is the threshold for a price increase. Do you use your average attendance from the last calendar year or the last 12 months? Or maybe just the month you renew? I already clarified with CCLI that only in-person attendance counts. I want to make sure I am being fair in my reporting, but don't want to pay more than we potentially have to. As always, the budget is tight. So this is something as a future church planner, I'm actually really interested. I know nothing about this. I know that churches pay CCLI. I didn't know it was an annual thing. I didn't know how it was based. So I'm interested to know like how that all works, because I bet you there's a lot of people who are in churches that don't know this side of it. But then I would like to know you guys' answer of how do you guys track attendance? And then what are you reporting?
I think it depends. If you're growing, then you want to, use the last year as an average. Whereas if you're declining, you want to use last week. You know what I'm saying? That way the number can stay small, and you don't have to pay as much. I'm just kidding. No, I think we use we just take the last 12-month average whenever I've done this, and just it is what it is. And if you're hovering, I mean, I don't know what to tell you other than keep your conscience clear.
That's good.
Yeah, I think this could also be a follow-up with CCLI as well. We just went through this with the reporting structure. I actually don't remember what we put on there because I'm not the one who does the final, like, all right, this is signed and we've paid this. I just remember our worship leader saying, hey, we've got to renew this. So I think it's our office administrator who takes care of this.
We have to renew it. And by the way, it's way more expensive than it was last year.
Yeah. And again, I believe it's, and this is probably a CCLI question, I believe it's in-person attendance in the worship center, right? Like not kids ministry, not the nursery. So I think you have to factor in.
Yeah, I think that's the one caveat to this.
It's basically the number of people that are looking at your screens.
People in the room looking at listening to those songs. Yeah,
and
I think
hopefully
that's right.
during COVID, you upgraded your CCLI anyway, because there's a different license that covers live stream.
There is a streaming license that you purchase. That
your standard CCLI that you could use 7 years ago, pre-COVID, didn't cover. And so that was a big thing when COVID started, that churches started to add on the streaming to the songs. And then I believe there's another license on top of that for if you're going to be storing your streamed services so people can go back. So there's one license for here it is live, and there's another one for...
Does it does it matter how many people are receiving your stream? Like if you got 2,000 people versus 20 people watching your stream, is it a flat fee?
I believe the streaming license is a flat fee. Am I wrong? We just renewed, but again, I don't remember the actual structure.
If you use multi-tracks, or like if you use tracks in the service, you got to have the streaming license, and those are streamed, you got to have the streaming license too.
Yep,
on top of paying for the tracks. So,
yeah.
Can I ask a more nuanced question that goes beyond the finances? So let's just say we're singing a mainstream song, but for whatever purposes they want to alter like a couple words of it. Are you allowed to do that with CCLI, or is that you can't? Like, how would you navigate that?
Pick a different song.
Like literally, you just can't do it.
No, are you saying?
I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm saying why.
Your praise team
it's
wants
not like
to
there's any one song
add
that's
a unique tag or something.
Well, like for example, I don't know the song straight off the top of my head, but I know in the past there's been a couple.
Sloppy Wet Kiss, we all know, Del.
No. It was a theological one. A pastor reached out to me and he wanted to change one line of a song, and because theologically, which I understood, and he gave me the new line, and I was like, it was actually really good, and he asked about, could you do that in CCLI? And I said, that's above me. I didn't know if you guys would know that.
I think it's just like if you are covering a song from another artist, as long as they're getting, the first example that pops into my head is Walking in Memphis, and Cher did a version of it, which is awful. But all
Of
of
course,
the.
you would know that.
I love Walking in Memphis. It's one of my favorite songs.
No, the part that
I-
Cher covered it.
It was in an episode of the X-Files. If I don't know why I remember that. But
Wow.
I remember being like, why is Cher singing? Because you could tell it's Cher's voice. But when
So
when an
random.
artist is paying to cover another song and they switch the gender specific pronouns or whatever else it may be, they're still paying the original artist who owns the masters or who owns the lyrics. You're still paying to cover that song. I think that's how it is with CCLI.
Well, I do know this.
You don't have to pay them to change. You don't have to pay them for the work that you're doing. You have to pay them
Okay, that's
for the
fair.
creative license that you're using their work.
Well, and I think a lot of pastors, myself as well, didn't know that CCLI, it's not like a blanket copyright waiver in the sense that, if I'm not mistaken, that artist has to be registered with CCLI. And if they're not, you can't do it. Like you can't just go play some indie artist who's trying to make money who's not registered with CCLI. If I'm not mistaken, correct me, Jeff, if I'm wrong.
I think that's the case. And I mean, I ethically wouldn't necessarily want to do that, knowing that they weren't going to get some kind of recognition or a cut. Now, I have a question for you guys that's popping into my head with having to do with reporting. How do you guys handle do you put a slide at the end of the service with all the numbers, the CCLI numbers? Do you put it at the bottom of the song? Do you not worry about it? We typically don't worry about it, but some churches really feel obligated to put it like at the end of the song, or I've seen churches in the post service, like scrolling slides, put it.
I think we do, because when we import from CCLI, it's tagged onto like the very end anyway. So I think oftentimes it's on our screen.
We do both. The individual songs will have the CCLI license number, maybe the bottom of the screen towards the end of some songs, not all of them. But in our pre-service announcement scroll, we have our CCLI license in there. And I think that's a carryover from COVID, because we had just updated our license because we got the letter of, hey, if you're live streaming, it doesn't cover this, 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 and this, and we will be.
No, you are.
Yeah, and we're checking in on churches' live streams, so we put that in. Here's my question: in the early 2000s, when I was at the megachurch up the street, who covered Hoobastank's "The Reason" to kick off a service,
Great song.
how does CCLI work with that when you're doing the whatever pop song to kick off? Or how is that different than the guy at the local bar who's playing cover songs all night? I don't think Billy Joel's getting a cut of Piano Man.
Yeah, it is interesting that this is kind of only a church thing. Like, is there like a body that touring bands, if they do a cover, pay? Like, I don't know.
Jeff, you're the guy on this podcast who's supposed to know.
Well, I don't do secular music in church, so I wouldn't know. You know what I'm saying?
I don't believe that anything is truly secular.
Oh, okay.
Andrew,
Everything is sacred.
I think if your band is called Hoobastank, it's not sacred.
Okay, so here we go. I've been Googling while y'all are asking the question. If the church is performing a song like for Hoobastank, they have to obtain a license through organizations like AS.
Hold on.
CAP, BMI.
Can you say the band name again?
Hoopstank?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry. But yeah, if they would need to get a license through organizations like ASCAP. That's what it says.
No.
That's
BMI.
what it's called.
Yeah.
I call those pants personally.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hey, here's something, Frank, you might be interested in. If your church is planting through another congregation, you may need a separate license for the new church. However, multi-site churches operating on the same umbrellas extend the coverage. So I think for you, you're going to have to get a new license one day, correct?
Yeah. This is something this is all new to me. Like, one thing I learned in Converge that a lot of churches in Converge do is you can latch on to the greater 501c3 of Converge. And so every congregation doesn't need their own 501c3. Now, this has nothing to do with what you just talked about with CCLI. But like, I'm curious. I'm guessing, because my last church, we shared the 501c3 with the greater denomination, but we also had our own CCLI license payouts or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I never assumed that I would be under the covering of Lakeview, because Lakeview is not planting a campus. It's
Right.
where they're sending out a church. But I mean, you're right. Like, one thing we still have to talk about is like some church plants, they like have a board of advisors from the previous church's elders and stuff like that. So like, These are all
gray.
questions that we're still trying to figure out, but I'm guessing I'm gonna have to get my own CCLI license.
I
Yeah.
think
CCLI, like this is for projecting lyrics, correct?
Yeah.
It's not for singing
Yes.
the song.
Right,
It's
it's for
because your
projecting the lyrics,
lyrics are
Well,
on a
it does
stream.
have to do, because according to what I'm looking up, significant rearrangements such as altering the melody, structure, or composition require explicit permission from the copyright holder. That's what I'm finding. So
Interesting.
it actually, it looks like it pushes down into our melody. I don't know how they would obtain that unless they're visiting or watching your stream, but
But I'm
according
saying
to
for like
the-
if you're traveling and you're playing cover songs, you're not projecting lyrics anywhere. Like
Fair.
that's
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Oh,
different
yeah.
that's a different animal altogether.
So this is a very niche question, and it's funny because we got a lot of good conversation of it. But I do have one question that I've never really paid attention to in my last church, even though I had to do some of it. So in my last church, the way we would count is someone in our congregation would literally count heads. I know Planning Center has an app called Head Count, which ties into your greater numbering counting system within Planning Center. But like this past Sunday, I saw someone literally counting heads at Lakeview and then counting I guess the check-ins from the kids ministry. Jeff and Andrew, I'm guessing you guys literally just someone counts the heads.
Yeah, I count heads.
Yeah.
I count
Yeah,
heads during the second song, and then I pull up streaming numbers after the service.
What, you were the head counter too?
All right, we need
I
to
mean,
talk
like-
to Andrew about delegation because there's no way you
That
should be
is-
counting heads.
That is the easiest volunteer position
Bro,
ever known
Me and
to
Tim,
man.
What are we
also
doing?
found out that no one from their congregation even cleans up this property either. Like
I was
garbage
picking up
outside.
trash outside. Andrew, if there's more than 3 people here, you should not be head counting. Like there's no way, right? Am I wrong?
Absolutely
I feel
right.
like I have if I go stand.
So
in the
your
back of the
argument
room
is
for
if
5
I can do it,
minutes-
I might as well do it. If
There's
Yeah.
literally
every
nothing you
pastor
can
said
say
that-
here to be right, Andrew. You should
My
not be
argument-
counting heads.
My
You're
no
argument
chance.
is if I go stand in the back of the room after announcements or whatever, no one's gonna blink an eye. If somebody else gets up in the middle of a song and goes and stands in the back of the room,
Unless,
Sure, I could have
and
some-
hear me out, unless you've designated them to do this every week and it's normal.
and they sit in the back of the room
Okay,
too,
that's-
because they know they're going to
Unless-
be counting.
Jeff, how do you do it?
I delegated an older lady in my church to count heads. Now, here's the funny part that probably Andrew doesn't have an issue with.
does she round up at least? Does give you
No,
a
she
good
doesn't
pastor's
round.
count?
She doesn't round.
She subtracts.
Depends on the sermon.
She doesn't know who all the new people are. So every week I have like a little bit. She's flustered a little bit when she leaves, and it's like, all I could get was a head count, and I'm like, that's cool. That's all I ever asked you for. So
Now-
she used to have a list of all the members and check people off,
Oh, wow.
and which I
That's
was
cool.
fine. I was great, But we have a couple people in the church who are like so good at knowing when someone wasn't here. It's 50 or 60 people. It's not hard to tell when someone's not there for a couple weeks. That I quit worrying about like taking attendance for the adults and just give me a head count, and then I just kind of depend on the people that know, hey, my friend hasn't been here for a couple weeks. We should check in on them, kind of thing.
Well,
So
I want to ask you something about counting. So let's just say you're running multiple services and you have, I'm just throwing a number out there, 15 to 20 people who are in both services because they're serving. Maybe they served in tech on the first service and they worship the next service. Do you double count those people?
So here's how we do that. In the Head Counts app that we use, we have adults in worship, kids ministry, online, and volunteers.
PCO?
Yeah. So we have those categories. So volunteers is its own head count. So we will do a total worship service head count and subtract that with the total number of volunteers. So total service minus volunteers. That way, no one is double counted. Volunteers are counted separate, and they're only counted once every Sunday. Does that make sense?
I think if you're just
we know they're all going to church.
They're counted once as a volunteer,
Not as
and they're counted once as an attend. If someone goes to 2 services, so like if there's a volunteer in Kidsmen, and then the next service they go to worship.
they won't be counted again. They've already
they'll
been
be counted as a volunteer in the first
Yeah.
one, and then it's an attender in the second one, right?
It's if they volunteer on that Sunday, they're in a volunteer database.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yes. And according to
Oh, okay,
CCLI,
Gotcha.
you are paying for the number of unique individuals engaging in the service. So according to where I'm looking, they're saying that you would do what Tim's doing. They only get counted once.
That is
Some
accurate.
churches
What
like
if-
to count them twice because it says a different.
What
That's
if
a
you
whole
have a
different
blind
story.
person?
Double counting is fun.
I'm serious. If you have a blind person, should they not count in your
Oh my
CCLI?
gosh, this is-
I'm gonna ask
That's
ChatGPT that one.
Oh my! Because they can't see the
Because you
projected lyrics.
projected lyrics.
Oh my gosh,
Andrew,
That's dumb.
that's the dummest thing.
Or-
That's,
If
that's
your praise team
you know
is
what,
looking
Andrew?
at the
You know
chart
what,
on their
Andrew?
iPads,
You know what, Andrew? You should make the blind person in your church count for you, because that would make sense.
But again,
Now, to finish what I was saying earlier, we use
I thought that
check-ins
was a
for our
fair
kids as
question.
well. So we
That's
take
right.
the total that the lady who just does it on paper, because there's no way I'm teaching her how to do it on check-ins. She gives me like a total head count, and then my wife Amy, who I've delegated this to, because that's what you do when you delegate things. She volunteered to, like, I'll just enter it all in since I'm already checking in on the kids' attendance, and so she adds the kids' check-ins with the handwritten paper thing, because she counts it during the service, during the sermon, which our kids have already left the room for. So all the volunteers and the kids in the nursery and their volunteers, they're all accounted for in check-ins. The only people that are accounted for with paper and pen is the people that are sitting in the service during the sermon.
Yeah, Andrew.
Delmar.
Also, ChatGPT, it dug into it and said, just for Andrew's sake, if they are engaging with the worship material, you have to count them, even if they can't read it. And then it suggested that you print them off song lyrics in Braille.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's
that
what I
was
was
very, very un-DEI question of you, Andrew.
I don't think we were just saying it's the people looking at the screens. If I wanted it to be un-DEI, I could talk about the adults with intellectual disabilities that attend our church.
You don't have to, though.
But
You don't
Wow.
have to.
I think that's another
Wow.
subject altogether. Do you remember when we were looking at this? Like, this question is going to take 30 seconds for us to talk about. And here we are,
All right.
Here we are.
12 hours later.
Okay. Let's move on. That was funny. Okay, this is good. Hopefully, we answer every aspect of CCLI for this.
And we clarified that it's pronounced hoobstank.
Correct.
Yes.
ASCAP too.
That reminds me of the camp that I used to go to in Brevard, North Carolina. They would tell us that they were having tube steaks for dinner, and it was just
Yeah,
hot
buddy.
dogs. But when I think of a tube
Mm.
steak, I'm now going to think of hoobastank.
Nice.
So
I pulled a tube steak on my 3-year-old yesterday. She ordered a hot dog at Texas Roadhouse, and I said, "Oh, your tube steak is here," and she was like, "What?"
Tube.
It was great.